Hello everybody, it's Pierce. Welcome back to another brief tutorial on HSD2 systems. This one is about combat. If you have not read through the book leading up to the combat section, I recommend it. I always recommend reading the book over going straight to the tutorials. The book is intended to give you pictures and diagrams, so it's all there and easy to reference. But in the event that you want to hear somebody talk about it a little bit, you can go to here. The reason combat is so far back in the book is because a lot of the systems leading up to it are required to really understand it. Stuff like armor and weaponry and equipment and mass and whatnot that control your character are all used in combat. So if you have not gone through those sections, you may be hopping to this part prematurely. Alright, with combat, the rules begin on page 298, 299 if you're on the PDF. We're going to begin a little bit further on to that. I'm going to start with actually just the mechanisms for attacking. So, an attack roll works a whole lot like a check, whether you're using a ranged attack or a melee attack. You're going to be using 2 dice and a proficiency. There's another score that's added to it too, based on the weapon that you're using. We'll cover that in a second. Begin by declaring an attack against your enemy. Say I have a rifle and I want to shoot the guy that's down the row from me. So I say I'm going to attack him on my turn. I'm going to roll against a difficulty of 2, which is the standard difficulty in combat. And if I'm shooting, which I had said I had a gun, I'm going to be using Mind Exert as my primary stat for it. If I'm doing melee, I'm going to be using Body Exert as my primary stat for it. Since I'm shooting, I'm using Mind Exert, and the proficiency I'm using is Ranged Combat. That's it for pretty much every ranged weapon except for some really extreme outliers. So I roll against a difficulty 2 check, Mind Exert plus Ranged Combat. The only other thing that I'm adding is the accuracy value of my weapon. Every weapon has an accuracy score. It's in a little circle on the weapon card, and that is an additional bonus added on top of this die roll. So with all those added together, I'm attempting to hit a target number. Now, unlike the normal target numbers of 12, this time I'm fighting against people, and they have an evasion score. The evasion score is the target number I'm trying to hit, and it could be anywhere between like 10 and 26, 30 in some extreme examples, where I might need to use additional systems to try to help me hit them. So we'll say that this person's evasion was a 16, and I roll the dice and I get a 17. Yay, I've hit them. Once I've hit them, it's time to deal damage. The damage value of the weapon is written on the weapon card. The only thing added to that is my ranged damage bonus, which I got in character creation and is modified as I continue to get stronger as a character. So I'll roll the damage on the weapon, and I'll add my ranged damage bonus to the damage that I rolled. We'll say I got a 26. I'm going to compare that to the enemy's Endure score, which is a combination of their native abilities and the armor that they're wearing. They'll say their Endure score is 22. I've gotten a 26. Their Endure score is 22. Because I passed their Endure threshold, I deal a wound to them. They've gotten hurt. This is a good shot for me. Every time that I pass the Endure threshold over the course of a single turn, I deal an additional wound. So if I do another attack and get the same roll, I will have crossed the Endure threshold again and gotten a second wound. If I don't make it to the Endure threshold by the end of the turn, the damage is lost. So let's say I attack twice. My first attack did 26 damage, my second attack only did 10 damage. I've made a total of 36 damage. They had 22 Endure. So in order to get to that second wound, I would have had to have done 44 damage total, 45 basically, in order to pass that Endure threshold twice. I didn't manage to do it, so that extra damage is lost. That's basically them soaking the incoming damage with their armor or their natural durability. The Endure threshold resets at the end of every turn, so I do as much damage as I can before the end of the turn, and anything that doesn't quite make it to the threshold is lost when the next person takes over. Melee combat works much the same way. You're still trying to get through an Endure threshold. You're still trying to hit using a standard check, except in that case you're using Body Exert and CQC as your stat and your proficiency. You will still be adding the accuracy bonus of the weapon on top of that. What can you do during a combat turn? Everyone's turn breaks down into 3 actions. The actions can be any of the following 3 options. They can be movement, they can be combat, or they can be support actions. Movement actions are what they sound like. They allow you to move. Combat actions allow you to do things like attacking. And support actions allow you to do pretty much anything else. And there are a few specific support actions like healing and like yelling for aid and things like that that have specific mechanics. But for the most part, if you're trying to do anything that isn't moving or attacking, it's a support action. In addition, bonus actions describe the act of trying to take the same action more than twice. So, in most cases, you're only allowed to take the same action twice in a turn. If I want to do 2 movement actions, that's all I can do. My third action has to be an attack action or a support action. If I want to take 2 support actions, my third action has to be an attack or a move action, etc. If I want to take the same action 3 times, like attacking 3 times or moving 3 times or supporting 3 times, I have to roll what's called a bonus action. If I successfully roll that bonus action, I can make a third use of an action that I've already used twice in the turn. Bonus actions are rolled by rolling 2d10 and hoping the result comes under your initiative score. We'll cover initiative score right here. At the beginning of the combat, you're going to be rolling initiative the same way you do in most combat turn-based systems. Rolling for initiative consists of rolling a single d10 and adding your initiative bonus to the roll. Unless you've paid into that, you probably don't have a very high one, as you don't start with an initiative bonus in most cases. But you can actually use readiness points to boost that. Whatever result you get is your initiative slot position for the combat. Allied characters can actually swap slots with each other whenever they want to, as long as they're not taking more than one turn in a round. So if you wanted to switch positions with a friend for one round and then switch back for the next round, that's all fine. You're basically reserving slots inside of a stack of initiatives. The other thing that a high initiative is good for, besides just going first, is that it gives you a better chance of rolling for bonus attacks. So the higher your initiative, the better chance of rolling those 2d10 for that bonus action under your initiative total, which will allow you to take a third action that you've already taken twice in a turn. What I've just outlined is actually the basics of combat. You now have the ability to run around with a move action, shoot or attack each other with your attack actions, and do anything else you need to do with your support actions. You continue to do those things until the enemy stops fighting, hopefully because you've done enough wounds to them or they've just given up. From here, it just gets down into details and niche cases depending on what you're trying to pull off. I'm going to begin with shooting details. These are the things that come up most often when you're dealing with a shooting war. Big things to consider with shooting. One of them is range. You effectively have range to the entire play grid when you're using a shooting weapon, unless your weapon has a specific tag on it like inaccurate, which limits your range a little bit more. In general, the only ranges that are going to be referenced in the game are point blank range, which is directly adjacent to you, 1 hex away, and short range, which is within 5 hexes of you. Inaccurate weapons and certain other weapons can't shoot beyond short range, or if they do shoot beyond short range, they start damaging their accuracy. Point-blank shooting is difficult because the person you're shooting at is moving very quickly, but if you happen to hit them, the weapon will hit harder than normally. It gets the exploit property, which deals an automatic wound on contact. The last big one is cover. On page 300, cover is described in a section in the middle, just depicting what different color looks like. There's covered, half-covered, blocked, and clear sight. If you're firing at an entirely covered opponent, you're not going to hit them. They're completely behind something, they don't get hit by the bullet. A half-covered opponent increases their evasion score by 4. A blocked opponent increases their evasion score by 2. And an opponent in clear sight doesn't increase their evasion score at all. Close combat has a few unique details as well. For one, anytime you have a close combat attack, both sides in close combat are actually attacking each other at the same time. It means that effectively, a hand-to-hand battle is twice as quick as a ranged battle, and twice as risky. When you attack, the enemy gets to attack at the same time. When it's their turn and they attack you, you get to attack them at the same time. Secondly, weapons tend to have a range written on them depending on the size of the weapon. It can be anywhere between an adjacent hex to 5-6 hexes away in the instances of longer weapons. The range is depicted on the weapon card. Anytime that an enemy is within that range, you can attack at them. Depending on the kind of melee weapon they have, they might not be able to attack back because you're out of range. This is a good situation to manipulate using movement and weapon ranges so that you can try to keep people at a safe distance while you engage them. Lastly, at the end of every melee turn, your combat is actually going to move around the battlefield a little bit. It's called Drifting Brawl. It's up here in the corner. You roll a dice to determine a random direction, in this case it's a d6 because you're in a hex grid, and you roll a d3 to determine how far you're moving. Move yourself and your opponent together that many hexes in that direction. It just represents you stumbling and brawling around the battlefield, which is going to put you into different ranges and make it so that your allies and your enemies have to continually move in order to try to keep a bead on you or contain where your motion is going. It makes the battlefield a little bit more exciting. Now, there are a bunch of other little details, but short of me reading the book to you directly, I recommend just going through them yourself. With what you've heard here, you're actually ready to start playing. Beginning on page 312 is a whole step-by-step combat involving 4 different people and several different situations. Look it over, and you're ready to go.